Okay, so we're going to start. So thank you, Bernd. Welcome and thank you very much, everyone, for coming to the next Eurocultura Career Academy webinar. And the theme that we're using today, or looking into today, is creativity, identity, and resistance. I'm ASHLEIGH VILK. I am a professional identity facilitator, among other things, and I'm an artist myself, a creative myself. And so I'm going to be presenting on this topic with you guys for around 30-40 minutes. And then there's going to be some time allotted, about 15 minutes, if there are any questions. And while we're talking, I do love interactions, but if we can keep mics muted and use the chat, that would be fantastic. But at the end, please feel free to unmute and have a discussion with me, because I love having some responses with you guys. Feels like I'm not talking just to a screen. And the presentation will be available for all Eurocultura members, and they can visit www.eurocultura.it. And we also have a wonderful new YouTube page, so I think it will be also loaded up there, so everybody can have a visit if they have anything that they want to re-watch after the presentation. So I'm going to keep cracking on. If we have some little bing bongs as people arrive, not to worry. Welcome everybody, and we're going to get on with what we're talking about tonight. So I am in the business of future-proofing people. And what does that mean? Well, that means working on your self-worth and your professional identity to find sustainable personal fulfillment. So I am all about going zero waste on your daily work life. Less energy wasted in worrying, less energy wasted trying to please people or get approvals, less energy spread across tasks that you don't feel play to your strengths, and less energy making other people's dreams happen while you put yours on the back burner. And for me, that is less wasted talent in the world, and less wasted talent due a lot to self-doubt and crippling self-esteem driven habits, which is why I focus a lot of my work on self-worth. The world can feel really unpredictable, and it's a lot like an ocean at times. I use this metaphor that we feel like we could be in choppy waters, and if you stay still, you'll drown. And so you use all your energy to tread water like mad, just trying to keep your head above the waves. But if you want to not only survive, but thrive, a clear identity can eliminate that wasted energy and can be something that you can stand on. And it allows you to explore and ride the waves and enjoy yourself in the process. We often struggle to see our strengths though, and that is because usually we are standing on them. So part of my work is to help people identify their strengths and values and build an identity around them. And so with this topic, we're talking about creativity and identity. So why did I decide to talk about creativity? Well, as I mentioned in the beginning, I am a creative myself. I call myself a hybrid professional because I'm a singer-songwriter and a coach and therapist and also an educator, and I'm also a professional identity facilitator. So I work with creatives to get clear on their professional identity. Now, creatives as a group of people face difficulties because there's no one straight path to success, and you have to know how to market yourself, which might not be a task that you're actually very fond of, relish, or enjoy at all. So it's why we'll be talking about knowing your identity as well as part of this webinar. But having said that, there has never been a better time to be a creative. So many options online to showcase, distribute, and monetize your creative works, but it can be a daunting prospect for some. And it's a lot to learn, and it can seem like it's difficult to understand how one could stand out in that crowded marketplace while also keeping your authenticity. So this is obviously for people if they are straight up creatives, like musicians or artists, but we could also say the same thing for business creatives on the call. So let's maybe use the chat. Let me know if you're a business creative or whether you are a straight up writer, singer-songwriter, artist, or a content creator. whether creativity is actually one of your side hustles or your side passions. And that'll just be really great to understand who is on the call. And if you want to pop in the chat as well, what is creativity to you? Fantastic. Jane's a writer and singer. Side hustle and the business creative. Fabulous, Bryony. So hopefully we'll cover both sides for you. Business development, still very creative. If you're an innovator, then you'll be using creativity to innovate within your company or within your interactions in business. Okay. So what is creativity? I'm going to share what I think it is, and feel free to share what you think it is in the chat. To me, creativity is about connections. It's about making connections. And I really think this quote from Steve Jobs highlights what it is meant by that description of connections. You know, see if you can relate. He said creativity is just connecting things. And when you ask creative people how they did something, they feel a little guilty because they didn't really do it. They just saw something. It seemed obvious to them after a while. That's because they were able to connect experiences they've had and synthesize new things. So when you ask a creative person how they managed to get to something, sometimes you do have this kind of response. Do you guys agree? You know, it can seem really, really obvious, but then at the same time, just not at all obvious. So my mouse is just dying, sorry about that. So basically what we're doing is we're connecting our inner worlds when we're being creative with the outer world around us, okay? And this highlights why identity is so important in your creativity, because what you're doing has to align, and your work is the result, what you share with the world. So if you aren't clear on your strengths and your values or your perspective that shape your identity, your message won't be clear for others. For artists out there, this will be your artist statement maybe, right? It will draw the line connecting your work to your identity and the world around you and what you're trying to say. So this context will really be necessary, as it's not just about the content of your creations, but the context that you create as a creative for people enjoying and interacting with your work. In doing this, you build a narrative that others can follow so they understand where the inner and outer connections lie. This is true for those in creativity in various different fields, not just for artists as well. Put in the chat maybe if you would agree with that, if that is an agreement for everybody. So we don't want to talk just about creatives who are in the field of art or music, but also for creatives in business. But for everyone, it's all about energy and satisfaction if you're thinking about sustainable creativity. You know, our energy level is really directly related to our self-esteem. So when things are going well, we feel inflated, we feel great. However, setbacks, failures, critiques can deplete our energy. So having a really clear sense of who you are and why you do what you do helps you bounce back quicker. So let's consider for a moment business creatives. The job market is really changing, valuing more hybrid professionals and recognizing the link between creativity and innovation. So sustainable creativity means being able to continue in the face of failures and difficulties. And in the face of those difficulties, we found that research shows we tend usually to fall back on old, tried, tested methods. We need courage to be sustainably creative when faced with difficult moments or challenging situations, or if we're facing internal resistance. So creativity, another great quote that I think explains exactly this, creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes, and art is knowing which ones to keep. So with this process, we really require trust. We need to trust ourselves and really be in tune with our intuition and what I call the invisible muses. So having a strong identity can help you because intuition tends to whisper, and it can really easily be drowned out by the loud resistance, which we will move on to talk about later, because I mean resistance in the fact that you hear the reasons why not to do something, everything that is trying to maybe pull you in a different direction from where your intuition wants you to go. And when I speak about invisible muses, I really mean the voices or the urges or the guidance that comes within you as a creative. If you know who you are and why you're doing what you're doing, then you're likely to be aligned with the guidance of your inner muses. I really like this quote that sums up how the imagination is like the product of this intuitive creativity within us. In Italian, immaginare is imagine, to imagine. In me mago agire, which means let the magician in me act. I don't know if you guys are the same as me, but sometimes I creatively have outputs that when I go back and look at them days later, I wonder how on earth or where on earth they came from. They seem to just arrive to me, and it's almost like I don't recognize the voice on the page, but it was me that wrote it. And I really think when we get into that zone, that creative feeling, that's what we're feeling. We are aligned with what it is that we want to experience and what we want to put out into the world. And that flow and that sense of ease is when we're not allowing resistance. Just like water going down a tube, there's nothing to stop it from flowing. And so all of us have maybe had that experience, whether it's in work, being creative, or being a creative, creating some kind of product. You know, you have that sensation when the ease of flowing out, you know, falls out onto the page, people say sometimes as well, or the lyrics just fell out of my mouth. That's when we're in flow, and that's when we're connecting into this invisible muse, right? So intuition is that. Bear that in mind when we're going to now talk about resistance. So as creatives, you will all be familiar with resistance, I'm sure, right? I'm presuming that everybody has experienced some kind of resistance in their creative endeavors. So if we're thinking about sustainable creativity, because we talked about it before, and being able to maintain energies and maintain those energies well, resistance is something that can exhaust them. Now, I've used this metaphor about opening a door before with people. So have you ever tried opening a door? I'm going to charge my mouse before it dies on me. Opening a door at the hinge. If you try and push a door at the hinge, it's so much harder. There is so much more resistance. If you move your hands and push where the handle is, the door opens easier. The outcome is exactly the same. You want to get through the door, but where you're focusing is obviously with more resistance on one side, something that's interrupting the flow, interrupting your ability to do something, and becoming something that's a really hard task for you, against understanding where your intuition is and where you can just move forward without having difficulty and with relative ease, okay? So, just like your muses, resistance is invisible, but its effects are very, very real. Its aim, if we personify it, is to keep you from doing your work. And while it may seem to come out of outside of you, it's actually self-generated and self-perpetuated. It's also a force of nature, and I call it a liar. And I say that because it's fueled by fear, which is how you can distinguish it from intuition. Intuition has creative intentions, and resistance triggers fear to block creativity. So remember the paradox I spoke to you about earlier, the adaptability paradox, the fact that we face a fearful situation and we tend to fall back on tried and tested solutions. That's due to fear. So you can think about it like fear literally killing creativity and innovation. And that's interesting for anyone in business, and it's also interesting for artists who are trying to get their work out there. So I would love you guys to ask yourself, what is it about my creativity that I'm afraid of? And if I did something about it, what is the worst that could happen? And maybe some of you feel confident enough, you want to share some fears and put them in the chat box. That would be great, because we can also share everybody's different experiences between us. I should turn my phone off, it's buzzing all the time, I'm afraid. Okay, well, we'll wait and see if anyone wants to share anything in the chat. It's not necessary at all. It's enjoyable sometimes to give people some one-to-one feedback. So resistance as being a creative is something we all have to face, because being a creative exposes you to other people. And that's scary, right? Especially if you're not clear on your identity yet, if you're not clear on the why of what you're doing or who you are while you're doing it. So being creative is a really vulnerable endeavor. So I'll share a true story with you. I released my first music video in 2021, and I've been writing songs for a while. I've been singing in studios for years. And many people working with me did not even know that I sang. And I, in 2021, finally created this first music video, and I was so proud of it. I've done it really well. Found a fantastic person to execute a vision that was done so tastefully and really, really fabulous. So I was really pleased. I put myself out there. I did, however, later hear from a colleague that, in my absence, an ex-colleague brought up my video on his computer in the office and mocked me. And this had been a person who, well, to my face, had been very complimentary about how great it was that I was following my creative instincts, right? And how great it was that I was doing this. But it was so disappointing to hear that. And in exposing myself, it wasn't only just, okay, disappointing to hear that someone's judging me and being critical or, taking the mickey out of me, but I exposed the fake nature of that working relationship with that person. And that relationship disintegrated as well. So I do understand being creative is totally scary. Exposing yourself is really scary. And this slide just shares some symptoms of resistance that you might be familiar with. So the biggest one, and where I put a lot of my effort into counteracting with people, is self-doubt. And it goes without saying. Doubting that you've got the ability, doubting your worthiness, doubting you're going to be able to make it, basically being stuck and not being able to move, because doubt is just keeping you in inertia. Criticism, it might be even worse now, because creatives presently have the advantage of the internet and platforms to share their creative works with billions of people across different continents. And such global reach maybe means, creatives face an enormous volume of critique and criticism of the work that they put out there. Procrastination, it becomes a habit. It can also be something that is linked to low self-worth and self-doubt. It becomes a habit that you create to avoid the fears that you have about what would happen if you actually completed your work. But every moment we can alter our destiny and make choices every second to turn the table on resistance and do whatever we want to do. Fear, good old fear, underpins all of these really, but it can just be the biggest thing that is stopping you and creating all the rest of these kind of resistance symptoms. But usually the biggest fear, I find, is actually success. What would your world look like if you succeeded? What would change? Who might you lose along the way? What would be different? What people say? How would I be seen? But getting your fears out where you can see them is what you need to do. And in my course I do of overcoming self-doubt, I say dial up the doubts. It's usually where your next greatest success lies. So don't let the fear fester in the dark. If you're a creative, write about it. Make an art journal page, a collage. Dance it out if you want to, whatever it takes. Get that fear moving so you're no longer stuck. And also you have to silence it somehow so you can hear the inner voice and sustain your creativity. Because as we said, your intuition and your inner voice whispers sometimes, and maybe even stillness is what's needed to be able to actually hear it clearly enough. Anyone else got any other symptoms they want to share that they think, oh yeah, I've got another resistance symptom, a different one? And then I'm going to let Monica, I'm afraid that other people can do the same better than me. Absolutely. So when we're living in this type of fear, what we're not being able to do is value ourselves and value our work. And this is similar to what we were talking about people not understanding or seeing their strengths because they're usually standing on them. The majority of people don't recognize the value of their work. They really don't. And so it can be then very hard to imagine putting yourself out there and pitting yourself up against other people. And that's where the identity piece comes in really handily. So that resistance, that feeling might still come. We're not going to be able to be huge egos and never have any kind of worry about putting our work out there. That resistance remains, but it can be calmed, and it can be altered by the fact that we're very clear on our identity and we know exactly who we are and what we're doing, and we know why we're doing it. So that's a really great one. Thank you so much for sharing that. Comparison then could also be one of these symptoms, right? That is a comparison. We compare ourselves to other people. But in doing that, we're always thinking that there is a self-esteem ladder of success almost, right? So because we created something that is a beautiful creation, or we are doing something that is connecting people or connecting information in a certain way, what the interesting and unique value of that is exactly us. So we have to be very clear on the relationship we have with us to realize what those valuable, unique offerings and contributions are that we make just because of who we are. So again, fabulous to work on identity, to understand who you are, to be able to kind of face these resistances with much ease. So I talk about the resistance compass. The resistance is a really good compass, right? Pointing to the way of what truly matters to you. In fact, the more you resist, the more you're probably doing what you're meant to be doing, in my book. Real artists face the fear and create. Only counterfeit artists say they create without fear. And I believe that completely. And this quote, the more important a call or action is to our soul's evolution, the more resistance we will feel towards pursuing it. By Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art. And if you haven't read that book, if you are a creative, do read it. It's a very interesting book. It's a snippet to read every day. And it just talks about the resistance to you creating your art. And it's quite motivational. And again, this is the same idea I was saying before about dialing up your doubts. The more creative resistance you experience, the bigger the idea waiting to come through you. So that fear, be excited about it. It's fabulous. Welcome it. But you're going to welcome it when you know who you are, because you know how you're going to be facing it, and you know what you're meant to be doing when you're feeling that resistance. Otherwise, it'll come like a wave and knock you over. So there's an element here about accepting discomfort. This quote says it fantastically. The purpose of art actually is, in many cases, to make you feel quite uncomfortable, or at least to go to that place that's already of discomfort inside of you and tap into that. So where we might avoid these sensations of resistance in other parts of our life, if we are really wanting to embody our creativity or use our creativity to its full, we really want to be leaning into these spheres with an identity and a self-worth. When you know who you are and recognize your strengths and values, you no longer need approval from other people. You no longer need to prove yourself. So you're not in the game of showing what you can do, but more about being who you are. And this really frees a creative. Your fulfillment comes from your expression of what connections you make between your inner and outer worlds, and then sharing that is what keeps you fulfilled. So you benefit from a clear understanding of what your perspective is, what your identity is, and how to combat resistance and fearlessly continue expressing yourself well into the future. So what would your world look like if you had a clear, creative, professional identity? You know, maybe you would no longer need to think about what others thought about your work or what others need you to be, but you learn to clearly communicate who you are and what you do and what makes your unique perspective valuable. Your contributions might start to be more about the work or the art than about you, which is when you really are able to connect at your best and most authentically, in my opinion. Really key benefits for you here, if you work on this and understand this, is you will have more energy, more courage, really less wasted talent and less wasted energy, new resilience that's based in self-worth and self-belief, and you future-proof against these resistance tyrants that are going to put you off your path and stall you having these big successes that you so well deserve. And this George Bernard Shaw quote is lovely. Life isn't about finding yourself, life is about creating yourself. I wholly believe that. We could talk about this creativity just on that level, creating the life that I want. You've still got to do all the same things. It's going to be vulnerable, you're going to have to be true with yourself, what your dreams are, you're going to have to make the decisions to understand every step you're going to take, because you know where you want to go and who you want to be and who you are. And with every resistance, you're going to have to break through them because you have that solid sense of who you are and self-worth. So just to clarify, not to spend more time on describing things, but the difference between a professional identity and a personal brand, I think, is just actually quickly a distinction I'd like to help you guys understand. So your professional identity is your roots. You know, if you're a tree, it is the thing that is really what you are building everything upon it, right? Or I said that badly. It is the thing that keeps you grounded, okay? It's the expression of your self-worth and not the condition for your self-esteem. It's who you are when nobody is watching, right? It's that DNA or the imprint that you leave on everything that you do. Whereas a personal brand, it's about me. I. You'll hear a lot of I. When people work with professional identity, you'll talk more about approaches. You know, the approach and the benefit that what I do brings, which is what art is. You're creating a context for people to experience something in a different way through your perspective, through your lens. Personal branding, you say how I want to be seen in the marketplace. Professional identity, knowing who I am in the marketplace, whether people see me or not. Hugely important. In personal branding, you're waiting for other people to value you by them looking at you in the marketplace and seeing, oh, okay, yeah, she's cool. Whereas if you know who you are, you don't need that outside external person. You have a sense of who you are without needing any type of approval. Success is determined for personal branding by your extent of followers, likes, shares, right? It's all self-esteem driven outside of you. Whereas with professional identity, your success is determined by more depth, meaningfulness, whether you're following your purpose, you know, no matter what's happening around you. And a personal brand, you know, sets you apart from others because the goal is to be different. The goal is to look like you're different. Whereas a professional identity connects you with others who share your values and approaches. So fundamentally different, and just worth telling you guys about that. So if I look at time, how have I done? Oh, not too bad. I've done half an hour like I thought I would do. So the next thing I want to share with you is just 2 opportunities that will be here for you. I am, as I said, a professional identity facilitator. I have 2 spots open at the moment for one-to-one coaching. And the benefits you can have from doing this type of work is to communicate with more impact. You can have others open the doors for you when you can do this because you communicate what it is that you do. You can stand out amongst the crowds as someone who's describing yourself very differently to the majority of the people, the creators that you will be in a circle with. You can raise the value of your work. And we mean that by you start acting like you're clear on your worth, and so other people will treat you differently. And you maintain energy and sustainable creativity, and that's something so important if you're going to be someone who is working in this space and wants to stay in this space for longevity. And then to just finish with, this is a group in May. I'll be starting end of May. It's this course on overcoming self-doubt, and I just want to share that we just finished a group in March with some creatives on that course, and they have started writing their novel. They had this energy, this lift, this block just went and disappeared, and they immediately started writing, and the flow was there. What I've been talking about before just was something that they experienced. And so the benefits for unleashing your creativity from the bounds of your self-doubt is particularly powerful in working on anything where you're trying to overcome this particular resistance. Okay, so I would love to connect with you guys. Please, anyone who isn't already connected with me, you can add me on LinkedIn. I would love to have a follow on Future Proof People. I'm working on some of my resistances on getting content created there, but I am going to be bringing a lot more free content on there for people who want to look more into this type of topic or type of work. Feel free to email me if you'd rather have a one-to-one conversation. And everyone who is here and present is welcome to have a free discovery chat with me for 30 minutes using this calendar link here. I'll also be starting a monthly webinar. So if you add me on LinkedIn, watch out for that. That'd be fantastic to be sharing with you. I'm going to be doing different topics, but it's all going to be based around this kind of self-doubt, self-worth area, and it's going to be well worth a look. So I would love to see you guys over there. So that is the presentation. I want to open up now, stop sharing, and see if anyone wanted to ask any questions. And maybe Paola, you wanted to say a few words. If there aren't any questions, feel free to pop in now.
Thank you, Ashley, for very much. We already discussed about my small EU project that is going to be finished this week, because end of April, and really appreciate your contents, because as you know, are quite close to some of the project goal, like resilience. Even if you use another word, you said resistance, no?
So resistance is the fear, is the thing that blocks us, but resilience would be your ability that you would use for having your professional identity and your self-worth. It would give you resilience. It gives you something to stand on, yeah.
Yeah, because we put together in our health project about creativity or creative or young and emerging artists, the concept of resilience, and we said psychological capacity, because it was connected to COVID pandemic period, because we just started when COVID-19 started. So the idea of the project was also about young artists, how to fight against COVID or pandemic situation and so on. So we use this word resilience, that is quite common. You know, there is also the famous PNRR, Piano Nazionale Ripresa.
Yes, yeah. Instead of resistance, I like bounce back ability, but I made that word up. But I like that because we're creators, can make words up. But bounce back ability is definitely something that you needed gosh, in the pandemic if you're a creative. So it's fabulous you were offering that course to them.
They found really interesting what you said. What you said about creativity, using the Steve Jobs word that is about how to connect people, is a really original meaning, because normally creativity, also in our project, at the beginning we thought about to be innovative, to do something new, to express your talent and so on. So quite traditional meaning. While you spoke about creativity in terms of how to connect things and people in an innovative way, because Steve Jobs was really a big innovator. It sounds good, it's interesting, it's a new approach also for your personal development, I think.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Bryony. No problem. Thanks so much for being here. Take care. Brilliant. Well, if there's no other questions or anything that Paola you wanted to add for your group that will be watching the webinar, the only thing left to say is thank you very much for spending this 45 minutes with me, and I really hope someone got some wonderful takeaways. And if you would like to connect with me, you have all the means you need to when you receive this presentation afterwards. And I wish you all a fabulous Thursday evening. Is it Thursday? No, it's a Wednesday, is it? I'm losing my mind. It's a Thursday. No, it's Wednesday. Fabulous Wednesday evening. So take care. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you hopefully in the next webinar.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.